All right, let's talk about what happens when things go wrong. It's a moment we all know, right? But today, we're going to look at it from a totally different angle, moving past the easy answer of just blaming someone to find something, well, a lot more useful.
So picture a major failure, maybe at work or something you saw in the news. Your brain probably jumps right to the mistake itself, the one bad call. But here's the thing. That's not actually the moment that defines everything. The mistake? That was just the start of the story. And you know what? It's not even the moment it all comes out into the open. Yeah, the headlines, the emergency meetings, all that drama, that's often just inevitable. It's a big part of the story for sure. But the really critical point, it's still coming.
This is it, the moment after. It's that quiet, super tense pause when everyone's kind of looking around and the story starts to take shape. This is the moment that matters most because the choice that gets made right here will change everything that comes next.
So, in this critical moment, a narrative is locking in. You can think of it like a fork in the road, and the path we choose determines whether the whole organization actually learns something and gets better, or if it just finds a way to move on without really changing a thing. And this right here is the fundamental question. Is the story we're all about to agree on going to be about a complex system, a whole series of decisions and pressures that led to this point? Or is it just going to be about finding a person to blame? Because, let's face it, once the story becomes about someone, everything else just kind of fades away. And let's be honest, blame is it's so tempting. It has this incredibly powerful pull, and there's a reason we go there so often. It takes a messy, complicated reality and simplifies it into something we can easily point at and feel like we understand. I mean, the contrast is just so stark. On one side, you have the messy truth, a whole tangled web of tiny decisions, trade-offs, things nobody really checked. And on the other side, the blame story. It's clean, it's simple, it feels satisfying. One person, one mistake. Problem solved, right? But the real appeal of blame, it isn't just about being angry. It's about reassurance. See, if we can pin the whole failure on one person, it means the system that we all work in, the one we rely on, it's fundamentally okay. We can just remove the bad apple, feel like we fixed it, and move on without asking any really uncomfortable questions about the structure itself. Okay, so if blame is the default setting, what does that do to the people inside that system? Well, this brings us to a huge paradox. We all say we want a culture of honesty and learning, but our actions often create an environment where speaking up early is pretty much the riskiest move you can make. Just think about it for a second. If you raise a concern before there's a full-blown crisis, how does that usually go over? You might be called obstructive, for slowing things down, or alarmist for worrying about something that hasn't even happened yet. Or worse, it can be seen as weakness, like you just don't have a firm grip on the situation. So here's the bottom line. The system subtly encourages people to just wait. It's often so much safer to stay quiet, see how it all plays out, and just hope for the best. And the really tragic result of that is, by the time the problem is so big that you can't ignore it, when honesty is desperately needed, the personal cost of speaking up has become dangerously, impossibly high. Okay, so if the blame game is a trap, what's the alternative? Where do we go from here? We have to shift our entire focus from punishment to something way more constructive. This idea of repair. Repair isn't flashy. It's not going to make a dramatic headline. It's the slow, sometimes painful work of actually staying with a problem, of digging in to understand its roots, and of accepting that the failure wasn't just one person's fault. It was an outcome shaped by the whole system. It's about collective responsibility. So here's what that typical blame culture looks like in action. It's a loop. A failure happens, we find a scapegoat, that person gets removed, and pew, everyone feels a sense of resolution. But look at that last step. The system resets, but it hasn't actually learned a thing. The same underlying problems are still there, just waiting for the next person to stumble into them. Now, let's contrast that with what a repair cycle looks like. A failure happens, but instead of finding a person, we surface the problem. The goal is to get it out in the open and really understand it. Then, the whole group gets involved in collective repair, and as a result, the system doesn't just reset. It learns, it adapts, and it actually becomes stronger and more resilient for the future. Now, this leads to a really fascinating and honestly a kind of uncomfortable idea. If you want to build a system that's capable of repair, you actually need to tolerate small failures. I know it sounds totally backwards, but insisting on perfection all the time, that's a recipe for a catastrophic breakdown. let's be real for a minute. How many times have we seen risks logged on some spreadsheet or concerns mentioned in a meeting, and then nothing happens? Foresight is important, but it often lacks any real urgency. A small, survivable failure, on the other hand, now that creates traction. It makes an abstract risk totally concrete, and it forces the very conversations everyone was avoiding.
And here's the difference in a nutshell. A fragile system demands constant, uninterrupted success. That means problems get hidden, pressure builds up and up and up under the surface until, boom, a massive break. But a resilient system, it allows for small cracks to show up. It surfaces that pressure while it's still manageable. It relies on problems being revealed, not on people being perfect. Ultimately, all of this, it comes down to how we choose to define accountability. And that choice, that definition, has some really profound consequences for the health and the effectiveness of our most important institutions.
Just look at this comparison. In fields like engineering or medicine, accountability means staying with the problem. The people involved are expected to explain what happened, to help correct it, and, crucially, to help redesign the system so it doesn't happen again. But in politics, accountability has pretty much come to mean one thing, and one thing only: resignation. The problem is seen as solved as soon as someone is out the door.
And the consequence of this is just devastating. Right at the moment when a person has gained priceless, hard-won experience about exactly how a system can fail, our political culture demands that they be removed. We're systematically throwing away expertise at the very moment it becomes most valuable.
This quote it sums it all up perfectly. If your system is designed so that admitting there's a problem carries enormous personal risk, and the only response to failure is getting kicked out, well then, people are going to rationally choose to stay silent. The truth will only come out when it's way too late to do anything about it.
So, and this is the key point, this is not an argument against accountability. Not at all. It's an argument for a smarter, more effective kind of it, one that has the wisdom to see the difference between someone acting maliciously and a system that's just badly designed, one that prioritizes learning over simple punishment.
And that leaves us with one last question to really think about. If our systems punish people the most harshly for simply admitting mistakes, what kind of behavior are we quietly selecting for? What kind of leaders, what kind of colleagues, and what kind of systems are we actually building? That's the real architecture of accountability we're all living with every single day.